All right, so thinking of deregistering a company in South Africa, huh?
Yeah, it's a big decision, and it can get kind of complicated.
It can, yeah. Luckily, we've got this guide, how to deregister a company in South Africa.
Yeah.
So we're going to deep dive into it, hopefully help you make the right choices.
Yeah, exactly. We're going beyond just the steps, like what does it actually mean for you?
Exactly.
Big picture stuff.
Yeah. So deregistering basically means taking your company off the official records, like hitting delete.
It's surprisingly common, but a lot of people, I think, don't quite understand all the ins and outs.
Yeah. Now, the guide highlights two main ways this can happen in South Africa: automatic deregistration
Uh-huh.
and voluntary deregistration.
Yeah, and it's called automatic for a reason. If you
Yeah.
don't stay on top of things, it'll just happen. You won't even realize it.
Exactly. So think about it.
Uh,
You're busy, right? You're running your business. Maybe you've moved on to other things, and you completely forget about those annual returns you got to file with the CIPC.
right.
That's the company's and intellectual property commission.
Basically, the company registration police,
Yeah, exactly.
making sure you're doing what you're supposed to.
Yeah, and just like with your car registration, if you forget to renew it enough times, they'll take your license away.
Right.
They'll come take your car away.
Yeah, except here, instead of taking your car, they kind of erase your company, and that's when things get tricky.
Yeah,
You lose legal standing, which can be a huge problem.
yeah.
You could be fined by both the CIPC and SARS. That's the South African Revenue Service.
The tax people.
The tax people, yeah. Somebody else could actually come and register your company name.
Oh, wow.
And even your contracts could become void.
Oh, so like, let's say I had a contract with a supplier
Right.
and my company gets automatically deregistered.
That contract may not be enforceable anymore.
Oh, wow.
And you can imagine what kind of a headache that creates.
Yeah.
And don't think that just because your company is inactive, you're off the hook,
Mm.
right? The law still views it as an entity that has obligations.
So you got to file those annual returns no matter what.
Absolutely. And, that's a very common trap for inactive companies. They think, oh, I'm dormant. I don't need to file anything. But that's a dangerous misconception to have.
Got it. So let's switch gears a little bit to voluntary deregistration.
Sure.
This is where you're like consciously making a choice to close up shop.
It's a planned exit strategy. Like you're closing this chapter of your business's journey, but you're doing it by the book, legally and responsibly.
Yeah. And the guide lays out the requirements. So you need to have stopped trading. You can't have any assets or not enough to go through like a formal liquidation.
Right.
And all of your annual returns and your taxes have to be paid up.
So basically, you're demonstrating to the authorities that you're tying up all the loose ends responsibly.
Yeah. Okay. So walk me through this a little bit. What's the first step in this sort of carefully planned exit?
First, you need to get a tax clearance certificate from SIRS. It's basically your proof that you've paid all your dues to the taxman.
So that's like getting the official "we're good" stamp.
Precisely, yeah. No outstanding issues, you're good to go. Once you have that, then you'll need to gather up all the necessary documents,
Oh.
like certified copies of IDs for all the directors, members, shareholders of the company.
I'm assuming there's some paperwork involved.
Yeah, you'll need to write up a formal letter, basically stating your intentions, confirm that you meet all the requirements.
Yeah.
Basically you saying, hey, we're done. Please take us off the register.
So this whole package, it goes straight to the CIPC.
You got it. The guide actually gives you a specific email address, deregistrations@cipc.co.za. So, just make sure you send everything in a nice, organized manner.
Good tip. Now, even though it's called voluntary, it still sounds like a pretty strict process.
Oh, absolutely. It's not like you just decide one day and poof, you're deregistered. There's a formal process, specific requirements, and the paperwork needs to be precise.
So this deregistration letter, what needs to be in it?
Well, besides the basic stuff, company name, registration number, you want to state clearly that you've stopped trading and have no assets left.
Okay, that seems simple enough. Signatures, I'm assuming, are a big deal.
Absolutely crucial. At least 50% of the company's directors or members have to sign, showing that they agree with the deregistration. It's a collective decision, so it needs to be documented properly.
Makes sense. Okay, so you've hit send on that email. How long before you're officially, deregistered?
The CIPC tries to acknowledge receipt of your application within 5 working days, but don't start celebrating just yet. Full deregistration can take up to 4 months, and if there are any objections, it could take even longer.
Objections. Now, that sounds interesting. Who would object to a company deregistering? Objections. Now, that sounds interesting. Who would object to a company deregistering?
Well, let's say you're a creditor and this company owes you money.
Okay.
Or maybe you're a former employee and you have like a pending legal claim.
Right.
That's the kind of situation where you might want to raise a red flag and say, hold on a second.
So it's a way to kind of protect people, make sure that companies aren't just disappearing without paying their debts.
Exactly. It's there to make sure that everyone has a voice, all the outstanding issues are dealt with before a company just poof, vanishes.
Okay, so let's say someone does want to file an objection. What happens then?
Well, they'd have to write a formal letter to the CIPC explaining why they're objecting, providing any documentation that supports their claim.
So it can't just be like, hey, I object. They need to, like, have a reason.
Exactly. They have to have a solid argument. And then the CIPC comes in, right?
Yeah.
To kind of be the mediator.
Right. They review the objection and all the evidence, maybe contact the company that's trying to deregister, get their side of the story.
Right. It becomes a little bit of a legal tug of war
Okay.
with the CIPC as the referee.
And in the end, who makes the decision?
The CIPC has the final say. They look at everything and decide if the deregistration can proceed or if it has to be put on hold.
Now, let's kind of flip the script a little bit. Let's say a company has already been deregistered, but then they realize, oh no, we actually need to bring this company back. Is that even possible? Can they kind of hit the undo button?
Yeah, you're talking about reinstatement, and it is possible.
Okay.
But there are, of course, some catches.
Okay.
Basically, it reverses the deregistration, puts the company back on that active list with the CIPC.
And I see the guide mentioned some requirements for reinstatement. What are we talking about?
Yeah, well, first of all, you gotta act fast. The company has to have been deregistered within the past 2 years.
So there's like a time limit on second chances.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just timing. The company needs to have been in good standing before the deregistration, both with the CIPC and SARS. So, no outstanding annual returns, no unpaid taxes.
You can't be a bad boy and then expect to just come back in, no problem.
Exactly. Reinstatement is really meant for companies that were generally following the rules, but maybe slipped up because of an oversight or some kind of unforeseen circumstance.
Right, okay, that makes sense. What about the process itself? What does a company need to do to apply for reinstatement?
It's very similar to deregistration, just kind of in reverse. You submit a formal application to the CIPC along with supporting documentation.
Okay, what kind of documents are we talking about?
Things like resolutions from the directors or members saying, yes, we agree to reinstate, financial statements to prove the company's viable, proof that any outstanding issues have been resolved. It's all about showing that you're ready to be an active, responsible company again.
I'm sure there are fees involved too.
Of course, the CIPC has a fee for processing the application.
Okay.
And if there were any penalties before the deregistration, those have to be paid as well.
So you can't just like jump back into the system for free.
Right. There are definitely costs associated with the process.
Okay, before we move on, I just want to say to anyone listening, if you're in this situation, if you're facing deregistration or you're thinking about reinstating your company, don't panic.
It can feel overwhelming, but usually there's a way to navigate these things, but you have to act quickly and make sure you're following the right procedures.
And we mentioned earlier, if you're not sure, get advice from an accountant or attorney.
Yeah, they can give you guidance tailored to your specific situation.
Yeah,
It's worth it when you're dealing with these kind of legal and financial complexities.
absolutely. Okay, so I think we've covered the ins and outs of objections and reinstatement. Let's kind of zoom out a little bit and bring it all together for our listeners.
Yeah.
Okay, so we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
Automatic deregistration, voluntary deregistration, objections, even bringing a company back to life with reinstatement.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot to take in. Hopefully everyone listening is feeling a little more informed.
Empowered.
Empowered,
Has
exactly.
to make the right decision.
Exactly, to make those good decisions. So we went through those two main types of deregistration, the steps involved, and even some of those common mistakes to avoid.
Right. Making sure you're keeping everything up to date with the CIPC and SARS.
Yeah.
Making sure your contact info is correct.
Yeah.
Knowing when to reach out to the professionals.
Yeah, those accountants and attorneys.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Absolutely. So before we sign off, I always like to leave our listeners with something to think about, something they can take away from our deep dive.
Well, remember, deregistering a company, it's not just about, checking boxes and filing forms. It's about finishing a chapter in your business's life, but doing it the right way.
Right.
So take your time, get informed, make the decision that's best for you, for your business, for your goals.
Absolutely. And if anyone is looking for more resources, maybe some expert advice, we've got links for you in the show notes.
Don't be shy. Check them out. Knowledge is power, especially when you're making big decisions like this.
Couldn't agree more. So until next time, happy deregistering.